Uh, don't feel like doing a whole big intro. Apparently enough people watched this last year where they wanted us to come back at least a little bit. So we're gonna do season two, Dennis and the Doc. I am Dr. Chim Richalds, alongside, as always, Mr. Dennis ThaMenace. Mr. Dennis, how does it feel to be back?
It's all right. I don't know. Yeah, I'm surprised anyone cared. I barely care.
We knew when we started it. We're like, if six people listen, like great. That's, we're gonna talk about it anyways, so why not do it like this? And I don't know, we've had a couple with like over 100 views. That's something, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure half of them are from us, but
Yeah, well, yeah, at least a few of them probably. But yeah, we're gonna do season two, so we're gonna start today with kind of our Jays preview, roster, schedule, stuff like that. It's gonna be an interesting year. And then as we get into the next couple weeks, because the season is right around the corner, we'll do kind of the same thing we did last year. We'll do like a preview of the conference. We'll give our predictions 1 through 11. We'll do like all conference teams. And then we'll do sort of a national one like we did last year. I think our predictions ended up looking pretty good from last year's episode too, if I remember correctly.
I believe that's the case. Yeah. I
And
don't remember much.
yeah,
I think I had Purdue losing in the title game.
I know I did
All right, well, there
To
we go.
Arizona,
I
which,
had him to Duke.
yeah, yeah, that sounds right. I think we both had, I don't remember if we did the Elite Eight on the pod or not, but we at least, I think we had four of the teams.
Yeah, sure, probably. Sounds right.
Yeah, we'll go with it. Did want to briefly, because we actually never did a pod together after the year ended last year. We recorded our separate reactions to the Tennessee game like that next day because we were exhausted after 22 hours of driving to lose a basketball game in Detroit. So kind of like quick thoughts, how last year ended, how the tournament run looks in retrospect.
Um, I don't know. I mean, fine. I don't know. My thoughts are well known. The season isn't a success because you didn't do anything. You didn't win a conference regular champ or didn't win a conference regular season title, didn't win a Big East tournament title, didn't even win your kind of shitty MTE, didn't make a Final Four, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of people have kind of come around to feeling the same way that at the very least you didn't take a step backwards, right? Like that in itself is sort of a success. We've dodged a lot of like potential first round upsets in recent years. We dodged the Oregon game that I think everyone knew when it was happening it was going to be tough, but that's a game that you would look back on in a few years. You'd say, "Oh, how the fuck did they lose to 11 seed Oregon?"
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was a tough game. Oregon obviously had two very good players play very well. That wasn't a great team. It was a game that winning it kept it from being a pretty big letdown, I guess.
And then the Tennessee game just kind of is what it is. That was a team that you could say was as good as us, you could say was better than us, and they had a couple players step up. We had a couple players definitely not do that, and the result is what the result is.
Yeah, you played about 5 bad minutes. Trey did nothing. Kind of is what it is. You
Yep.
uh you lost to a team that's a little better than you, which I don't know, like I said, in itself is fine. But yeah, kind of is what it is.
And I know this is something we've talked about online, we've talked about offline, and it's my biggest sticking point last year when people kind of came at me for also saying the season wasn't a success, is you're just never guaranteed to go back to these places. I know we were talking about it, at Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago. Like, just because you think the next guy or the next core or the next team is going to be the one, it's never a guarantee.
No, not at all. I mean, I can think of a lot of teams who kind of thought the future was going to be bright, future was trending up, and doesn't seem to be looking that way. I mean, you had it's a different sport, but you had the Eagles who came very close to a Super Bowl, had their whole receiving core back, QB on a rookie deal, and kind of looks like that ship sailed.
Yep, and college basketball surely has plenty of examples of that as well. I mean, you look at even like to make an extreme example, a team like Michigan State, who in the last, 15 years has probably stared down the barrel of a lot of success without getting back to that place that they were at one point. And, now you're staring at it like Izzo's in his twilight years. Are they necessarily going to be the same program they were when he's gone? You don't know. And it's a frightening thing. And when the season ended last year, we were looking at a much bigger overhaul than we currently are because reports were at least 50-50 on call coming back at best.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, getting him is the whole like he's the floor raiser of assuming he's healthy, the team cannot be bad with him.
Yeah. Wait, and
Like
somebody, I don't remember who on Twitter posted it the other day, like we haven't finished worse than fourth in the Big East with him in the lineup.
yeah,
That Baby Jays team finished fourth, which is kind of crazy considering the way that year
they-
started.
they're also not, I don't think they're the fourth best team. Like I'm sure Ken Pom and whatever would support that. But yeah, point taken.
Yeah, it was a combination of a couple of good wins, probably getting better as the year went on, and yeah, maybe being the Big East probably had a bit of a down year that year. I think it's safe to say too.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't a great Big East year. I don't remember how many tournament teams they got because I mean that was the Providence year.
Mhm.
Wasn't I don't know.
Yeah, well, so we'll talk off season first. So I what we lost. I mean, the Trey and Baylor is going to be the focal point here, and it should be because the question this year is going to be how much of their impact can we replicate? For Trey, I mean, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that because I think it's it's safe to say one of them is much easier to replace than the other.
Yeah, I mean I think it's funny if you looked back, or like if you looked back 2 years ago, like had they both not come back last year, Trey and Baylor would have made whatever combined amount of money. And I think they made probably the exact same thing by
Yeah,
coming back, but it just flipped who made what. Like, I mean, it's the risk you take. I think Baylor's just infinitely harder to replace than Trey is. Like, I don't think Trey was really that good last year. Like, you can create him in the aggregate pretty semi easily, I think. Like, I'm not super worried about that.
that was actually the line I was gonna use. I was gonna say like there's a world where Pop Isaacs is a one for one replacement for Trey. There's no world where anyone on the roster is a one for one replacement in Baylor. He's the one. You have to create his rebounding, his scoring, and his passing because not one player on the roster is going to have all of that.
Yeah, I mean, Isaacs, I think, is going to be a worse defender than Trey.
Yeah,
But I think offensively, yeah, I mean, you can see how he gets there. And I think he's probably, I guess I don't even know. Like, I mean, I think he's the biggest wild card on the team, like from a basketball perspective, you want to say Fedor by
from an eligibility
yeah,
perspective. Yeah,
eligibility, how many games is he going to play? And like, always a little question about how foreign guys are going to translate. Now, again, he's not your standard like 17-year-old freshman. Like,
no, yeah,
a
we'll get
man
to
who
that.
frankly should not be playing college basketball, in my opinion, but take it. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I think Shireman is the big loss. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this deeper, but like I'm of the opinion this year's team does not have the ceiling of last year's team. Like to me, this is and like not saying like a Duke where it's like, oh, their ceiling is one, their floor is six. Like I get that's
Mhm.
less spots, but like I think Creighton is one of the narrowest range of outcomes of teams in the country this year. Like I think their ceiling is a four, their floor is a seven. Like
Yeah,
anything
I don't think that's unfair.
I don't even think at a four, if it's a four, I think it's like the low four that is the trendy upset pick to lose to a 13. Like I think 5 and 7, I
I
would feel
think
pretty.
I mean, I think there's a world where it is higher. because you have those opportunities in non-con to set yourself up a little higher in the seeding, and I'm sure we're going to have some pretty lofty metrics if the Kansas game works out or you go on the road and win in Tuscaloosa. Not expecting that, but you certainly have those opportunities to be a top 10 net team for most of the season. You saw kind of the Alabama formula from last year, even though they lost some of those big games, it didn't really matter.
Well, the reason though that didn't matter, and I guess we'll see, is because like when Alabama wasn't losing games, they were like beating the absolute shit out of every team. Like to be fair,
Right.
like by game Creighton, like Creighton also killed teams, but like Creighton was killing Florida A&M where Alabama was killing. Like Alabama, I think beat Liberty by 50 points. Like
Hmm.
that's why Alabama. Like it wasn't necessarily that they were losing close games at Creighton, at Carolina, or whatever it was, but like it was that in addition to those close losses, like essentially playing to expected score, they were absolutely killing bad teams. And like I think Creighton's going to continue to dominate like the Florida A&Ms. I think they're going to continue to dominate just because you have um, the way the defense is built, like where teams aren't as good, they can't knock down pull up three or can't knock down pull up jumpers like we concede. They can't get to the rim over Kalkbrenner. Where like, but I don't think we can. Like a McNeese State, and they might even be too good of an example for this team. But like I don't think that's a team we can beat by 40.
No, no, I mean, I don't know how many teams can beat that team by 40, but I digress. I mean, yeah, you've got those. The thing is, though, we play so many of that cupcake kind of team where if we go through non-conference, what, like 9-2 with the loss at Alabama, and then say you drop one of the games in Vegas, like you're going to be top 12 probably.
Probably. I mean, that's also asking a ton, I think. Like, I think you can make a very legitimate argument that Kansas is the best team in the country. I mean, you can make an
Oh
argument
yeah,
Kansas and Alabama are the best team in the country.
yeah,
So
yeah,
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 I don't
for
know.
sure.
I mean, it'll be, and I mean, also outside of, actually, I guess I don't know if that's true. I mean, they've been hit or miss in games against top tier competition, which I guess everyone is. So it's sort of hard to use that as too much of a knock. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not super high on this team. Like I do think they're going to struggle a little bit against like top level. I mean, it's same story of top level competition, top level athletes.
Yeah, yeah, and you can see the plan that's kind of being put in place to try and mitigate some of that. Like we're recruiting a different kind of player to an extent. We clearly went after a different kind of player in the portal this year than what we were used to. So I think Mac recognizes that to some degree. And you can get what you can get, right? We can't just guarantee all of a sudden athletes are going to want to come here and play a very systematic offensive an offensive way of playing basketball over kind of like a raw athleticism sort of thing, but I think they're at least making an effort.
Yeah, I mean I think everybody who watches basketball kind of knows it's the same issue, but at the same time, like, it's not as easy. Like now the question with this team is like, well, how are they going to do 3-point shooting? Like, unless you're getting
Right.
the 5-star NBA lottery picks, like you have to concede something. Like you can be Texas A&M who's uber athletic but can't hit an outside shot to save their lives. Like that's the other that's the other extreme. Um, so yeah, I mean he's clearly trying to make an effort to get more versatile with like Jemiah Neal's pretty much the anti-Creighton player.
Yeah.
Um, Larry Johnson's a very different type of athlete and scorer than they've got in years past outside of Kaluma, obviously. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think there's a lot of it's weird because I think on an individual level there's a lot of variance outside of Kalkbrenner, obviously, and probably Ashworth. But like on a team level, I don't think there's hardly any.
No, because you kind of can figure how it's gonna, like, just from a probability perspective, one of the new guys is gonna click a little bit. One of them is gonna take a little long time to fit in. It might take us a while to find out who's our four, but eventually we'll get there. Like that's kind of the thing with having a bunch of guys up in the air. You have a pretty good idea how many of them are going to click and at what percentage. The question would be if any of them turns into, a legit jump guy, like a legit breakout kind of guy. But it's yeah, like you said, it doesn't feel like an especially hard team to project this year.
No, I think outside of like the high, like again, like the absolute elite teams, the absolute terrible teams, like I think this is one of the teams most in the country that I think I could get within a 10 spot range.
Yeah. Well, and
So
everyone's and I don't want to like jump through either like the aren't you going to regress so much because Baylor's gone conversation. Like, yeah, I think certain parts of our game are going to suffer huge because he's gone. I think we're going to have a tougher time facilitating. I think we're going to have a tougher time in transition. We're going to have a tougher time shooting threes probably. But at the same time, they say, why don't you project a bigger fall off then if you agree how important he was to your program? It's because of Kalkbrenner.
yeah, the best player in Creighton history, according to one beat writer. Um, and I mean, yeah, and I guess in a way, like I guess I am probably projecting a fall off, and like I think I guess just talking through it, I'm a little lower on them than you are. Like I I don't think it's a top 15. Like I think like 15 is the ceiling.
Well, I mean,
Um,
if you told me to guess a seed right now, I'd say five.
yeah, I'd be right around there. I mean, five, six, seven, I guess six then. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, like and like I guess to be fair, like that kind of is a reasonable fall off. Like I think they finished the season 12th last year, like 12 to 25. Like that's a pretty reasonable fall off in my
I
eyes.
think
Like,
12 to 20 to me, that's like one extra loss. Like, yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I don't think the team will be as good as last year's team. So, yeah, I'm projecting a fall off. But when you lose a player of that caliber, in theory, without replacing him with really anybody, like if we're talking about Isaacs as the Trey replacement and Jemiah Neal as your Baylor replacement, you should be projecting a bigger fall off than that.
sure. I mean, I think you're probably projecting Fedor as the
Yeah, yeah.
with I don't know. Have you heard anything more about that on that front?
So I have, and we can kind of get to it. So like with the off season, I listened to an interview. It was in May, I think. Greg did an interview when Trey was in the draft and seemed like he was staying in it. Baylor was gone, and we knew we had one scholarship open. And I remember him in that interview kind of sort of being coy with it and saying like, "Oh, we have some plans for it." I remember he said we were talking to guys that were in the draft pool and maybe considering pulling out. There was still like a 10% chance Trey was going to pull out and come back. But I think they've had this in the works for a little while, um, because it's a really interesting situation to be in where I want to defend and praise Mac for being innovative and going out and getting a guy like this, while at the same time acknowledging that, yeah, it's clearly pretty harmful for college basketball if stuff like this continues.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not gonna fault him at all. Like, and again, he's on my team, so I'm gonna cheer for him and root for him. Like, there's no way a 21-year-old with 200 professional basketball games should be allowed to play college basketball. And please, for the love of God, someone don't take this as us being negative about the program or something. Like,
That's what it's going to be.
yeah, probably. Like, I don't like again, good for him. I'm happy. Like, I've long said, like, I'll take a murderer on my team if they put ball and hoop. Like, I don't care at all. Like, it's just more of like a kind of broad comment, I guess, on the amateurs. It was like, there's no way this should be allowed. That said, if it is going to be allowed, or I guess loosely allowed, depending on how this
Right.
eligibility shapes up, and like, yeah, do it. Like,
When
why
and
would you?
it's one of those things too where it's not like we're the first ones doing it either.
No.
There is precedent on the books now where we should have a pretty good idea what to expect this is going to happen, where he's going to have to sit out. It'll be some weird, obscure, random amount of time that the NCAA pulls out of their ass whenever they make this decision. And then they'll
Yeah,
let him play.
probably just appeal it because they haven't won a lawsuit in 6 years.
Might as well. It must have some really bad lawyers over there.
I've had that thought. Like, I don't think they've won a lawsuit in 6 years. Like, it might just be all interns at this point.
Well, when you're working from under the facts, things tend to get in your way at some point. Because at some point you just realize, what does the NCAA, what do you actually do here, right? Like it's the ultimate grift in my from where I sit, where you've managed to create pretend value for yourself as an organization, as this governing body that doesn't really have any power to govern, with rules that aren't really rules and can be changed on a whim. And it's hilarious when you think about it, like how it ever came to be such an important entity given its position now. And the writing's on the wall that the NCAA's clock is going to run out here at some point, I think pretty soon. But yeah, it's not a surprise that it's just a, a field of incompetence.
Yeah, I mean it's again whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean with that being said, it sounds like we're gonna have the deepest team in Creighton history for the fourth straight year.
yeah, I think I tweeted that, like, exciting that this is the fourth straight off season where we've come into it with the deepest team in Creighton history. Uh, it's one of those things where it shouldn't be wrong to say, but it's going to be again.
I mean I'm treating it like the opposite of UConn. Like I'm just writing in UConn to win the conference. If somebody else wants it, take it from them. I'm writing in that Creighton will be five guys playing 30 minutes with one playing about 20. Prove I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, you famously write UConn in at the top of the conference when they win national titles, right?
Yeah, well that's what I'm saying. I'm not being wrong that way again. Like I can I can live being wrong if I have them at the top and they aren't good. I'm not doing it the other way.
That's kind of the approach I took last year, but I didn't do it with the bench. And yeah, I think I've learned my lesson in the reverse, where again, like there's some of this where I feel like we should be excited about some of these guys, some of these potential young guys, but I know what's going to happen is they're going to play in a game where you look at it and go, they just don't seem ready yet, and they'll find themselves on the bench by the seventh or eighth game of the season.
Yeah, I mean I'm expecting nothing from any of the freshmen. Like
Yeah,
I'm not even like I'm counting on them to be zeros and effectively red shirts. Which I'm sure is also going to rub some people wrong, like Ari McAndrew. Um, like I think I just saw a stat before this said like the universal stat lines last year of like top 100 prospects, like if you averaged it out, where I think like 3.8 points per game, 1.8 rebounds, like especially when people are taking their fifth years and sixth years and however old people, as long as people like Stephen Ashworth are still playing college basketball, like freshmen are not going to do anything
no.
unless you are Cooper Flag or two others.
Yeah, I mean you're maybe talking about, like, I haven't really dug into all the national rosters yet, but top of my head, you're talking about maybe seven freshmen who you feel like are going to have a real impact on their teams this year.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I mean, even think about last, like, how many freshmen can you think of that were game-changing players? Like, I can think of Jacoby Walter on
That was
Baylor.
the only, that might be the only one I come up with.
I don't, and again, last year's freshman class was weak, so whatever.
Right.
I think there'll be more than that this year. Like, I think Cooper Flag is going to be a big deal. Um, I don't know if I can think of another one immediately off the top of my head that
For this year or last year?
for last year.
No. Yeah. Yeah, this year you got a couple. Like, I do think McNeely's going to be really good, and we'll get to that. Like Rutgers, we'll see.
Rutgers, that's a fun. You talk about the opposite of Creighton of like you could tell me Rutgers is a top 15 team. You could tell me they're like a six seed in the NIT.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would just caution everyone who's expecting McAndrew, Johnson. I don't think people really have those same expectations of Davis for contributions this year that just, especially with the COVID year, like that is a playing against 24-year-olds is a big difference.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe it goes back and like I mean like just kind of the way of the portal in general now like that'll be really interesting to see in a year or two is like is this because of the portal or uh is this
Because
because
of
of just the
COVID
COVID year?
years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like
and that's
again,
something we
and with the
really
two being
should.
combined, it's really stacking upon itself.
Oh, both of those happening at the same time is going to make it impossible to, because next year you should be able to know, right? Because in theory, the COVID year is done next year. So we
Yes,
should
which
be able to look
reminds
at
me,
it. Go ahead.
bet remind me night one, I'm gonna bet every single under next year.
No,
Because
I
like
think
no,
we've talked
I'm
about
getting
this before.
yeah,
I
no,
agree
we've
with
had
you
this. I've
completely.
had this circle for 2 years. Yeah, like I don't think people fully grasp what a big deal that fifth year of eligibility has on people, and like
Mhm.
what that's done to efficiency, what that's done to the college game. Like I think it is going to be extremely noticeable in 2 years.
The quality of play. Anyone I think who hasn't noticed the rise in the quality of play the last couple of years isn't paying close enough attention to the fringes of college basketball. Because I think you could watch a Duke Carolina game and go like, yeah, this looks the same as the past couple of years, maybe even a little worse. Watch a McNeese game, a Grand Canyon game, right? Like that's the level at which it's being raised significantly.
Yeah, yeah, and it's gonna be again, it'll be very interesting when one goes away.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
see
it
kind of what
does
we
it because it should come crashing back that year. But I don't think it will because I think the portal has also made pretty significant changes to the way the game is played.
Yeah, I think it's just hard. Again, for that reason, it's so hard to step in and be a freshman nowadays, a freshman that contributes from day one nowadays.
Yeah, and
Um,
you said 3.8 points per game. I think anyone who's expecting that from any of our three freshmen should drastically lower their
I mean,
expectations.
If McAndrew comes off the bench this year and gives you 5 and 2, I think that's a pretty damn good freshman year.
I
Like
would
that,
agree.
I would be shocked if it's that high.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny you said like McAndrew and Johnson are the ones that I think people have the higher expectations for. Everything out of camp says Davis is the one that might get minutes this year.
Yeah, and I can see that, and I think I'm sure part of that is a little bit of just like positional.
Yeah, it's a little
And we saw,
necessity.
I mean, we saw too, like I don't know what you've heard on Trout. Like I've kind of been out of the loop. Like I don't know what you've heard on Trout, but like Trout just from like a body perspective clearly was not ready for power conference basketball this year. And that's a guy who'd been out of high school for a year. Like he was
Right.
slow. Um, like, I don't want to call him fat, but like I don't like
He looked
probably
like a
needs
five
to
when he was supposed to be playing a four.
yeah. Like I mean I'm sure they know it. Like he's probably cutting 10 pounds of fat and trying to add 10 pounds of muscle in the off season. Like yeah, he was pretty much unplayable last year in conference games just because he didn't have the body for it yet. And like I think asking McAndrew to go from high school ball to banging with which quick side, you know like Zach Fremantle is back? Like how the fuck is
I saw that today. I remember I'm like, oh yeah, shit, he's still around.
that's insane. Like it's like defending a guy like that, like it's not gonna happen.
No.
Um so yeah, I would caution very strongly.
Yeah, and there for the folks who are, oh, you're being too negative, like doesn't mean I don't think he can be a good player at some point or is gonna be every bit the recruit that we've made him out to be. It's the
No,
nature of the game right now.
yeah, and I'm talking about McAndrew because he's a Creighton guy. Like I would tell this to anyone
Yeah,
who who's saying like, oh, I think this freshman and says a name other than Cooper Flag and maybe like VJ Edgecombe at Baylor. Like
yeah.
outside of 5 names, I'd tell you the exact same thing. So it's not a Creighton thing. It's not a McAndrew thing. This class could be very good. Like the Baby Jays team that you had step in and be good college basketball players from day one is very much not normal.
No, that's an apparition that was ahead of its time. I think that same team tries to go at it last year and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that might be not giving them their fair shake for, really genuinely maturing and getting better throughout that year. And you did have a couple of veteran players who played pretty damn good ball, but it's an exception, not the rule at this point. Your base expectation for a freshman player should be to spot minutes if needed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I guess switching a little bit then, like what do you think of returners,
Yeah. Yeah.
the non-freshmen. So Miller, Trout, Green, King.
I mean,
Um,
for me, I'd want to start with Ashworth because I
uh,
think the minimum that he has to do is improve. I don't think this team gets to be a 5 seed or even maybe a 6 seed if he doesn't improve on what he does last year.
yeah, he has to. I mean, he's got to shoot better. Like he can't shoot 32% from three again.
Yeah. And because we saw parts of his game come along throughout the year, but that never quite did. Every time he had like a 5 for 7 game, he'd turn around and have another like 1 for 5 the next day.
Mhm.
But his defense clearly got better throughout the year, where he went from unplayable to actually pretty decent. If you watched really closely what he did, he was kind of never out of position at the end of the year. His passing is pretty good, like certainly above average, if not borderline elite.
Yeah, he was in the right spots always. Um, he didn't get abused. Like he fought through screens, didn't get abused too bad. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a 5'10" white guy who weighs 165 pounds. Like you're gonna have limitations. There are gonna be guys who you are going to be at too big of a physical disadvantage against to really stop. Um, that just kind of is what it is.
Yeah. But so it really comes down to if he shoots 37% from three, I can't imagine we have a whole lot of issues with him this year. That would mean that the failings are coming from elsewhere.
What number did you say?
37.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Again, that's still not what he was at Utah
No,
State, but
that's
he
that's
did
again, that's like a
take that.
baseline for him. There's a world where he anyone there's an absolute world where he shoots 41% from three this year. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's out there.
It'd be nice if it did.
Yeah.
Um,
As far as the guys in the four slot, um, so Mason, this is something you told me the other day. Like, yeah, you kind of forget. A lot of people didn't know he got hurt this offseason.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't know if he broke his leg or exactly what it was, but he has not played much ball since the end of the season. I think it happened pretty soon after the end of the season. He started practicing, I don't know if it was on time or close to on time. I don't know if he's fully involved yet. But at the very least, he has not had an off season of growth and development, and that's pretty damn important for where he is in his profile.
Yeah, I mean, I think man, like I feel a little bad for him because like I think it's almost like it's a little bit like Ashworth, where, like I think he plays hard, like I think he knows what to do. He just for whatever reason has not been able to put on the weight that like a Kalkbrenner could. He hasn't been able to round out his game. Like he plays hard, he gets you a couple of rebounds, can knock down an open three, but like I think I think he just kind of is going to be what he was last year.
Yeah, and I love it for what it is, but what it is isn't, necessarily a starter on a, top team. It's one of those things where I think Baylor picked up a lot of the gap on what you probably would have needed him to do last year, and he won't have that same safety net this year. He can't really put the ball on the ground at all. He
No,
can't really create his own shot, create his own space, but he's excellent at the few things he does, which looks a hell of a lot better if you're like a sixth man or a seventh man.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a fine bench piece getting 12 minutes a game. Um, but I mean,
I Yeah, I mean if
I
he
think
can
he
get up
probably gets
four
it.
shots in a game, that's pretty good.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of would be expecting Green to start over him at this point.
People called me crazy when I said it at the end of last season, but it seems kind of now like that's the way it's trending. I think DeMarinis in his practice notes said that's his guess. I forget. Mr. French mentioned something similar recently that he was running with the starters at practice to whatever extent that's worth at this point. Um, I've been reading a lot of practice notes over the last few days. They said his shots improved, his strokes a little different. So that's kind of the missing piece for him, probably, where if he can, again, you kind of create Baylor's rebounding in the aggregate, where if some combination of him and Neal or him and Zugic can equal what Baylor and Mason were doing last year. And you don't even have to equal it because I mean Baylor was doing it at such an elite level. But if some combination of our 3 and 4 spot can get close to it, that's great. And I think he probably gives you the best chance at it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think he has real upside, I guess, to try to get into a maybe not quite Damian Jefferson, but like fit that role a bit. And like, I mean, again, he's gonna play hard. He's gonna get a couple rebounds, like gonna get a couple O boards, steal you a couple possessions, get a putback or two. I don't think he has a ton of talent. At least again on like a power four scope, but like he plays hard and does enough right that you can live with that and want him as a guy on your team getting real minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, and somebody mentioned too, and I guess this is something that they're experimenting with, is him kind of playing a bishop role at times too to spell caulk.
Just going small at the five.
Yeah, like because I mean, if you're playing like I don't know if it's maybe when Trout's out there as a four, you can kind of mix match them with 4 or 5. I don't know.
Sure.
We've had
Yeah.
success doing it in the past, and yeah, like you said, the Jefferson role is kind of what you hope for from him because Jefferson wasn't a great 3-point shooter, but it was good enough where you had to respect it. He could stretch the floor a little bit, and again, with a guy who shoots 70% from inside the paint, if you have 4 guys on the floor who can stretch and pull defenders away from him, that's only going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all you're building your entire team this year kind of around Kalkbrenner as
Yeah.
you should. Um, the offense runs through him. The personnel you play runs, I guess, around him with him in mind. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of the approach you have to take to be successful, and I think they will. I think anything besides that would be very, very surprising to me.
Yep. And we're going to restart this, so hold on just a sec. Yeah, so you've got Green and Miller there, and again, I expect Green will probably start the year at the four. That could change. They might pick and place, but I would expect the minutes to be shared somewhat amongst those two. And then you have Trout in the mix, who, I think last year it's pretty clear where his shortcomings were. Elite shooter at his best, doesn't really have a position he can guard. Occasionally looked like it was just not fitting the offense well. The screen game looked different when he was out there. Rotations were different when he was out there. But, at his core, there's still a player in there. He's a big time high school recruit who probably regrets where he ended up landing at first. And that might have cost him a little bit of his career panning out the way it maybe otherwise should have. But reports out of practice are good. They said he had slimmed. He's making just about every shot he can attempt. He's got a wider range of shots than he did maybe last year. But at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, where are the minutes going to come from and what is it going to look like if he's going to be successful on the team?
Yeah, I mean, he just has to be in a spot physically, I guess, where like he can be an option in either place. Like I mean, like you said, like he couldn't really play either position last year. He was too slow to guard fours and too weak to guard fives. Um, so yeah, and I don't know what he's kind of looked like in the off season. Again, I've kind of been out of it. I'll get back into it in a couple weeks here. Um, but I mean, it's sort of the point where like, and again, I like kind of think he's one of the best pure shooters in college basketball, but like can't really do much with it if you're a nothing on the other end, I guess, and a nothing outside of that. And it's kind of how he was last year, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect on that ground this year. I mean, the one bit of like again, call it insider info or whatever, is that he was running as a top 7 player as one of our first options off the bench when we've been going through that kind of stuff in practice. So that's kind of a question of has he made a jump now where they can trust him with that? that was the plan at the beginning of the year last year too, and then it just didn't come to fruition. So is it going to be kind of a repeat of that, or has he done enough work at this point where they feel comfortable trusting him, or is it literally just a case of Mason still recovering, so that spot's available right now?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, him and Mason are kind of the same player of like don't really have a great position fit, um, great outside shot, and just don't really provide a ton else, to be
Yeah.
frank, I guess. Um, so yeah,
And yeah, they both have had their moments where you look at it and say, okay, I see the profile, right? I see the player that's in there that we're trying to get out, but you got to be effective on both ends. You got to have a bit of dynamism to your game. They're very one-dimensional.
hmm
And Trout showed you a couple of times last year, you'd have those bursts of a little bit of inside game too, where he showed he had some of that. I know he has post up, he has, little pick and pop mid range too. That's not really our systems. I don't know how much that comes into play. But you look at them and you say, if one of them manages to break out, is that something that changes the ceiling, or is it, what's the difference kind of deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just the type of player to me where like it's hard to project too much of a breakout. Like
Yeah, like
just
what would it even have to look like?
that's what I'm saying. Like I don't see a world where Trout is like a I can take you like I can knock down a three. I can also two dribbles pull up. Like I can have a back to the basket game. Like I can be, I guess to be harsh, competent enough on defense. Like a breakout for him would have to look like what he was last year and also a plus defender. And I don't see how that happens.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
you're you're thinking of it as some kind of, it'd have to be some kind of a 3-and-D situation. I think the player that is probably closest to his profile of what a breakout would look like is Caravan. Like that
sure.
kind of like big stretch four is probably the wrong way to put it, but is going to knock down, tough threes in big spots, competent enough with the offense to rotate through, to pass through, to find open guys. Like Caravan isn't the most complete player in the world either. And a lot of the reason why he's so good is because of guys around him. But I really do think he's a very good basketball player. Like he always knows what he's doing, and he's plus enough on defense where as long as he can play within the system, everything else will be fine. Like that's I think what he probably would have to shoot for. Problem is he's going to be, 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than most of the other fours in the Big East.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just hard to figure out like how he gets there. Like, I just it would just be such a monumental leap in athleticism that it's hard to see, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I think Mason, I guess, like I can kind of see just like from a body perspective. Uh,
If
but
Mason had a full off season where he was able to work on his handle and try
yeah,
to become a more dynamic player, maybe I'd feel more optimistic about it. But if you gave me a choice between the two of them, like who I think is more likely to have a breakout year, I mean, I'd say Jason Green, but
yeah, I was
it,
gonna say, yeah, given the choice between Miller and Trout, I'll take, yeah, I would take Green too. I mean, I would, yeah, I'm with you there.
yeah.
Um,
And I mean we can talk about the last returner who sometimes I look at the clips and I still can't believe he's actually still here, but Fred King is still on the roster. Like we can confirm this, right?
yeah,
He's actually listed.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe he just loves Omaha, but yeah, I don't know why. Like, it's a little bit of like in the portal era, I feel like you always get a little mad when somebody leaves, and like if he left, I'd have been like, yeah, like go, go bully some kids in the summit, like go
He was
average
Yeah, he was
12
gone
and
enough.
10.
He was gone enough where we were like in serious talks with replacements for him too. And I know a
Yeah,
lot of that is also just because Kalkbrenner was potentially leaving, so we kind of had to do our due diligence. But yeah, that seemed like a foregone conclusion. And if what I heard is true, he really didn't get the kind of interest that he thought he was going to.
Which so like, is it no one wanted him or no power teams wanted him?
I think it was power and close from what again, like pure speculation. This wasn't like a inside
Yeah,
thing, but it's one of those where if you don't even hear hype on a guy, because like I tried to like look out after I heard that and see. I always look up during portal season like the guy's name and offers or interest or whatever, and I couldn't find anything for
yeah.
him. So
See,
maybe
that's
may
interesting because like
I
again, I
can't
don't.
believe there's a world where, like you said, like a summit team wouldn't want him and he would probably dominate that league.
I mean, he's looked great. Like he looks great in buy games. Like,
Yeah,
and when he's in certain matchups, when he gets a chance to get run, like he looks really good. Like
that
that's
Marquette game 2 years ago, like I thought, I'm like, here we go, we've got our next guy.
yeah. I mean, he looked. That would be like if I was a Nebraska Omaha coach and like I don't, who knows, like I'm sure he'd have to take a massive pay cut. Like that would be that would have been priority number one. And like maybe that's too small. Like South Dakota State, like that's a that's a guy I would have been all over.
Even if you're like I think like a low level Mountain West team, like if you're Wyoming, I don't see why
Yeah.
you don't give that guy a shot.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
like you said, maybe that's just a little below what he was willing to accept, but surprising.
Yeah, which I mean, I guess sure, fine. He's a body that'll you'll throw at him for 7 minutes. He'll pick up two fouls, probably grab a rebound, probably miss a putback, and yeah, I guess that's it.
There's value in a guy like that. Like we've talked about it before, like how to be low on fouls at the right time. And sometimes throwing a guy in there who's going to get you two isn't always the worst thing.
No, I would, yeah, I mean, like he's again, he's fine in his role. Like as long as that is his role, like the role I described is his role of him playing 7 minutes, doing exactly that, fine. But like, really don't want him playing 30 minutes in the event of an injury.
No. And I wonder if that's why you're maybe looking at a guy like Green, like, hey, can you play that Christian Bishop role of this, like I call it like the somehow this works role?
Yeah.
Because there's no way that should have. And I don't know. But yeah, it's one of those things like I assume part of the deal is Kalk won't play as many minutes this year. I assume that's part of him coming back is like can you do something to reduce the chance of injury? If I mean, at this point, he's probably making as much this year as he would have anywhere else, Europe or otherwise.
I bet he's probably
So
making more.
yeah, I mean, some of those European leagues do okay, and I don't know, maybe he's got the profile for it, maybe he doesn't. Hard to
Do you
say.
think he wants to do that? Like,
My
I
guess is no.
again, I've always gotten the vibe from him that like I could see him playing professionally for like a year or two. Like, I don't think he like wants to be a guy who like grinds in the G League or something for 8 years.
I don't know. I'm not gonna speculate too much on that, but sometimes you look at these guys who mature kind of early, like he's married now.
Well, he's
Like,
married. He graduated, I think, in 2.5 years.
yeah, it was a while ago.
I think he graduated before me, which is crazy because he's a year. And I graduated in four. Yeah, he graduated semester my senior year, and he's a
Yeah,
year
I
younger.
I knew it was early. So, I mean, you think about a guy who's got maybe other priority. Yeah, you never know, right? So, if he wants to just come here and air it out for one more year and make some pretty good money while doing it, I mean, obviously great for us.
Yeah, that'd be funny if you half-assed this year and just played like 3-point line to 3-point line and just shot like 250 threes. I'd almost
I
respect.
assume I mean, I assume it's gonna go way up. Like he's gonna shoot probably every three that he gets.
I mean, I would guess. I what? How many times? Let's see. How many attempts did he have last year?
I was looking at this. He shot a lower percent from three last year than he had in his career, which, small sample, but
Yeah,
still technically counts.
shot 54 last year. I mean, I'll guess like the over/under of like 75, unless he wants the all-time field goal record, which he probably needs to
Oh yeah.
knock that off. If he probably needs to quit with the threes if he wants that record.
He's in position for it right now, right?
He's within, I think he fell outside of it because again, he went 16 of 54 on threes.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's within like if he didn't shoot a three this year, he'd probably get it.
Yeah, probably. If he's anywhere near his career averages. Huh. Food for thought. But yeah, I mean, I expect he's gonna shoot more threes this year in an effort to be NBA palatable.
Yeah, but you know what? Go ahead. You've earned it.
Yeah, I don't think it's something you can really complain about. Like if he's coming back this year, I'd imagine we had to have made him certain promises about hopefully improving his draft stock. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't in a great negotiating sense there.
No, no, he is in position to get everything he wants.
Yeah. So I think really the only other name is Jemiah Neal, right? I mean, I guess kind of
Well,
pop.
yeah, so we can talk about like the new ads now. So if you want to start with Neil, that works.
Yeah. I mean, died 2023 or what, 2023, born 2024. Welcome back, Arthur Kaluma. I think that's just basically who this is.
He doesn't turn it over as much, does he?
I mean, it's pretty much a 1-to-1 assist to turnover rate.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Assist rate, I mean, last year assist rate of 11.0, turnover rate of 10.6.
Well, isn't
The year
Kaluma's turnover
before.
like 20 something?
Yeah, probably. I mean, to be fair, in 34, and he only played a third of the minutes in 2023, but his turnover rate was 20.4.
Oh,
So
there you go. Okay. Yep. Welcome back, Art. Nice to see
welcome
you
back,
again.
welcome back, Arthur Kaluma.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's a fair comp, isn't it? Like that's
that's pretty much just exactly. It's just exactly.
the
Yeah,
question
the
is going to
turnover rate is a
be
little lower. I mean, Kaluma's probably a little better than him.
yeah, the question is going to be can they improve his shot enough where he's somewhat of a weapon. I don't know. I really struggled with this one. I know when I dug into it, I didn't hate it as much. He's got some attack the basket in his game. The defensive upside intrigues me. He's a big guy. He's a leaper. He's an athlete. But God, he took some fucked up shots last year, and it looked bad while he was shooting it too. So they would have had to get in the lab on his mechanics.
This just feels like McDermott saying like, "Oh, you want a fucking athlete on this team? Like, fine, here's your athlete." Like
Well,
that.
it's funny because when I was did my like portal episode or whatever, I we were looking at uh Justin Jefferson, who ended up at Iowa State, Micah Parrish from San Diego State, Roddy Gale from Ohio State, and Neil. And I'm like, these are the least fucking Creighton players I've ever seen. Like none of them shot better than 30% from three. They all either didn't even bother with assists or turn it over as much as they assisted. All like decent rebounders, but probably should be better for their size. I was looking at them like, am I going fucking crazy here, or are all these guys misreporting who we're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess in Neil's defense, like I think Bobby Hurley's a fucking idiot.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah. That's I think what we're actually hoping here is that he was just horribly misusing him and couldn't get him under control to play within a system and take good shots.
I mean, Jemiah Neal, like 27.5% on 142 for attempts last year.
Yeah.
First tier A and B competition, 20% on 77 attempts. Like, yeah, it's not good. Like
No,
that
this is one of those
decent
things
shooter.
where before the Zugic news, I was genuinely looking at this. I'm like, well, fuck, Mason better be able to play the three this year, or we're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah.
Because this is not like looking just at the profile, looking just at the numbers. This is not a guy you can play 30 minutes in a game.
Yeah, you can if you're Arizona State.
Yeah, you can if you can if you want to finish at the bottom of a bad conference.
Actually, while I have this up, so Ken Palm has like player comps essentially.
No.
Um, so like it says like they were similar to this guy in this season. Who is Jemiah Neal's number one player comp from what year? And I promise you, you know who it is.
Oh, I mean, I so that suggests to me it's not Kaluma.
No, it's not. That'd be really
Uh,
fun.
Oh, who? I don't know. I mean, it's a very wide answer here.
It's a 2022 player. Or it's
Give me
their
a
2022 season.
conference.
Big East.
Oh, okay. 2022 Big East. I mean, like Posh.
The correct answer is Alex O'Connell.
Really?
That is that is his number one player comp. I don't
Okay. I mean, I don't hate that.
I don't know. I mean, player comps, all models are. I mean, yeah, talk here. I'll read this over. Some sciences, whereas people often put an incredible amount of weight on one's skin color. And well, safe to say we filtered that out. Um, yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Sure. Alex O'Connell. Welcome back, Alex O'Connell. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do with that what you will. Just thought it was funny.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, if we get that, I'll be in a lot better of a mood, but I'm not so sure that's what's going to happen.
I mean, Alex O'Connell's stats were not great that year.
No, they weren't, but it was, he didn't have to be that great. It was very much a thing where it was like any of those five guys could have had their day and produced or just done enough to not, like a good defender. He rebounded a little bit and he made some threes when he had to, but I imagine most Jays fans probably have fonder memories of him than they would remember if we lost a couple of those one possession games.
Yeah, I mean, look at the stat. Like Alex O'Connell was a 102 O rating. Rebound rates are virtually identical. He turned it over a lot more. Like, yeah, I see the comp.
Yeah.
Slightly better. He only shot 32%.
Yeah, I
Um,
knew it was worse than most people would have thought.
Interesting. All right, well,
He took a lot of hero ball threes that year, and I think again, like not an unfair comp because Neil did a lot of the same shit last year, which he will not be doing this year.
hopefully. And hopefully that's not the only guy we say that about.
I don't remember because I looked at somebody did like a breakdown of his synergy too, and I don't remember if it was transition threes or pick and pop threes, but one of them he was like 80 something percentile in.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, there's something there. I remember when I looked at like the deep dive or whatever, I'm like, I'm not as weirded out by this move as I otherwise would have been. So I don't know. There's a player in there.
Yeah, I'm not, again, if he's gonna be a bench guy or like a fifth starter who's your John Rothstein glue guy, then like whatever, fine.
Yeah. Like old Jays fans might like a Cole Huff kind of guy, maybe. I think I liked Huff a lot when he was here, but if you get that kind of production out of him, I think you do cartwheels because then you're probably in pretty good shape.
Sure. So I mean, I guess you want to switch gears to the guy that they are gonna need production out of.
Yeah, we're gonna need a hell of a lot of production. I mean, you have an opportunity to get a guy who scored 16 points in the Big 12. How negative can you possibly be about it, right? Like I was one of from a basketball perspective,
And for
I
Creighton,
don't
it's not negative at
understand.
all.
Yeah, well, I don't understand. I didn't really understand the fit at all. And I'm certainly not the only one who's in that boat, but 16 points in the Big 12 is 16 points in the Big 12.
I mean, if you want to get excited, and this is why I will be a Pop Isaacs fan, because I had them against BYU to close out a parlay, and I think they're down 18 in the first, and holy shit was he on 17 in the first, and holy shit was he unreal that game. Like, I mean, he showed flashes of just being able to light it up. Like that BYU game, he had 32 points on what, 11 of 19 from the field, 6 of 9 from three, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals. Like the the vision is there. Like or the
Yeah,
the ceiling is there, I
yeah,
guess I should say. Um, but yeah, like it's gonna be again, it's gonna be a different system. Like McCasland is a very defensive oriented coach. Um, that team did not have the offensive support or system I think that we had. Um, yeah, I don't I don't know.
well, because you look at it and say, what would him improving look like? And it probably looks like his points per game going down, but his efficiency going up.
Yeah, I don't think you need. Although I guess I mean,
You
depending
probably
where they won
do.
some
That's
games, like
that's what
he's
I'm
gonna play,
saying.
you're gonna need someone to score.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I'm like, him improving in theory would be taking less shots, but taking better shots because that's kind of where his flaws came out last year. But do we
Yeah.
have another guy on the team who deserves those shots more?
No, but hope I guess the hope is that you can scheme more open shots for him, I guess, that like when he is missing. Um or I guess when he is taking shots, they're better looks, I guess, and misses that you can live with. And I mean, I guess also the one other thing to mention to be fair to him, like he was hurt, I think, for a lot of last year and not at 100%. Now again, you never really know with those injuries. Like,
Well, he had shoulder surgery this offseason.
yeah, and he had the hip too, didn't he?
Oh yeah, that's right.
I was thinking more. I forgot about the show. I was thinking more hip. Like, you never know like how much of it is like actually affecting him on like a play to play basis. Like, I'm sure it affected him a good amount. Um, but like you never know exactly how much credence to give to that. Um,
Yeah, the ceiling I think is clear. His ceiling is an all-conference player.
yeah, absolutely.
If he can come in and kind of play the same role that Trey did, in theory, he could be better on open looks than Trey was. There
Won't
were
be
points
hard.
last year where it felt like Trey couldn't hit the broadside of a barn on a pick and pop look.
Not the only one.
No, no.
But yeah, I mean, it was yeah, I mean, like the role should be different if he's willing to embrace that role, I guess. Like there's gonna be I mean, I also think there's the opportunity that you see the reemergence of like the pick and roll game that Nemhard ran with Kalkbrenner too. Like he's able to get downhill more, get to the rim. Like there are weeks last year where he took 22s. Like I'm not sure Ashworth took 22s all of last year,
Hmm.
where he probably did, but like I think you can see that piece of the offense come back a bit, which would be, I think, welcome in my eyes and another thing to make defenses respect.
Yeah, it's a potential for more dynamism on offense, which we're gonna need because if we can't rely on the three as much this year, we're gonna have to find other ways to score. Um, and with the other stuff with him, like I was definitely not super happy at first, and I think I made my thoughts on it pretty clear. I think now that a lot more of the stuff has come out, I don't feel quite so bad about it. And at the end of it, I'm not going to sit here and be the morality police, but if you're lining up and getting really excited, to defend him this year, well, get ready to learn obscure Bahamas rape laws, buddy. Like,
Yeah,
if you're gonna do it, hey, more power to you, but I won't be engaging in any of that. People can say whatever the fuck they want to say.
yeah. Certain Wayne State graduate is very clear to point out where the laws lie.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna be in the business of doing that. Like, I
Yeah,
think there are
it's
things that can
a
be said in
reason.
his favor about the way that all shook out, and I'm perfectly willing to leave it at that and not engage with it.
It's the best case scenario. It's ethically questionable, but
Yep, yep. That's where I always start. Like, what is your best case scenario with what happened there? Because if it's still gross, then well,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
seems to be the case. But whatever.
yeah. I guess that will. Um,
It's we won't be the first team to have something like this happen, and it may have happened before. Who
I was gonna
knows?
say it may not be the first Creighton team to happen in the last 4 years.
If you don't
Someone might
know,
say.
just be glad you don't know.
Some might say, yeah. Um, I mean, worst case, we just hire Buzz Williams and take it away.
I was kind of waiting
Um,
for that one.
whoops. Yeah, sorry, Big East Golden Eagle, you fucking idiot.
Oh
Look
my
that
God.
one. Look that one up, you fucking idiot. Why did Buzz never ask a man his salary, a woman her age? Buzz Williams, why he left Marquette with a Sweet 16 team entirely returning to take over a 1-17 Virginia Tech team? Hmm.
He wanted the new
Hmm.
challenge.
Yeah, something like that.
Something about like TV ratings, or he wanted to go coach an athletic big man who can run and stretch the floor.
Yeah, yeah. Fucking idiot. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess just to close out Isaacs on a basketball perspective, like he did shoot 38% from three his freshman year.
Yep.
And he did shoot 90% at the line his freshman year and 84% last year. And like that's normally a decent enough indicator of your true shooting potential, I guess.
Yep.
And so like it wouldn't shock me in a better system being healthy, um, to see him get to 35, 36%, which is a big deal.
Yep.
Uh,
That would be huge. Because at any point above 32, you're talking about an improvement on Trey from behind the line.
yeah, somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor guy. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of mostly everyone. I mean, I guess we didn't talk about Kalkbrenner that much. Like, there's not a ton to say. Like,
No, our feelings on him
generational,
are very clear.
yeah, generational defender, retire the number on senior day.
Yep. If
He's
like
the
the
ultimate floor
argument for the
raiser,
yeah,
whatever.
the second best Blue Jay of all time will go down as one of the best Big East players of all time, which is a crazy thing to say.
Yeah, and they're 10 years in the conference. I mean, second best, does everyone agree with that?
Not everyone. Yeah, nothing. All right.
Um,
I mean, if we want to talk more Zugic, we can because I don't think our I think we're being very cautious with him as a fan base, which is probably a good thing for our own sanity. But I don't want to understate like how good he might be.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all like it's very important to, I guess, realize this is not a, and I think most people do realize like this is not a 17-year-old coming over who's raw. Like, again, this is a man who has played 200 professional basketball games, some of which is coming to the Bundesliga, which is like a legit European league. Like,
Yep.
that is a professional basketball league. Like that is the best Bundesliga team beats UConn by 15.
Yep. Oh, I don't. It might be more than that.
Probably, yeah, much more, whatever, much more. Um, and he, I believe, averaged like 10 and 5. Like,
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a chance he comes over and is a first team all conference player.
Yeah. It's really I think it's a matter of it's all a question of not if but when. It's when does he get eligible? When does he feel comfortable? Because yeah, it's a little different. He'd be shooting with a different ball. The rules are a little different, right? Like, if you want an example of that, Sam fucking Froling. But in theory, if he's anywhere near the player that he was over there right away, he's not maybe an all conference player. Like he is an all conference player.
Probably, yeah. I mean, does he do a ton off the dribble? Like, I know his shot is as good as, like, I think he probably just pencil him as a 40% three guy.
Yeah, he does some work off the dribble. Like watching him, he gets to the rim pretty easily. So I don't know if it's gonna like his moves don't look great or anything. He's very much kind of like a straight line dribbler, but it works.
Uh-huh.
Mitch, I guess, played against him, Ballack, in a game, said he's absolutely filthy.
Okay.
So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I mean, if he's at his worst, he's gonna be a 40% shooter from the wing, like catch and shoot.
Yeah, which is a big, and I guess we've had knockdown, knockdown foreign shooter before not be able to shoot, but
Yeah,
this is different. This is
no,
different.
it's different, and he can rebound. Not like Baylor. Like there are few guys, you know, in that play wings at any level of basketball that rebound as well as he did. But he can fill some of that gap. Like if you're talking about your 3-4 goes from Neal and Miller to Green and Zugic, I don't feel too bad about that at all.
Yeah, I think that's a big upgrade. Like he does, I guess, bring something a little different. Like, I mean, again, just look at this guy. There's no way he should be playing college basketball.
No. And because I was listening to that, it was that pod. It's the only time I'll ever listen to those clowns. It was Doster and
Oh yeah.
Oglesby. And it
And
was pissing me off while I'm listening because Oglesby was like so pissed about it and like taking it kind of personally. Like, how is this
yeah.
guy allowed to play college basketball? But I get it.
Oh, I do
Like,
too. Yeah, if Dan Hurley pulled this shit, you'd be like, you
oh, I'd be
motherfucker.
so
You
fucking
mother-"
mad.
But like, yeah, he just shouldn't be allowed. So I
No.
mean, you take your, we're sorry, Mr. NCAA. We'll send him 3 games.
Yeah,
You no
darn,
no
he broke
comparison.
your amateurism rules. Ah,
Uh,
rats. We'll have to
we'll
hold him
even
out until checks notes December 3rd.
you know what, NCAA, we'll throw you this bone. We'll let you win a lawsuit, which you haven't done in a year and a half. We'll let you sue us for one game. We'll let you win it. Just to just to say you won one.
Yeah,
Um,
but people are talking out of their ass. Don't believe anyone who says that they know when he's going to get eligible. Nobody has a damn clue yet. If you're guessing based off of Ivisic or whoever it was last year, yeah, probably late November.
yeah.
Like
Um,
that would be my guess at least. That's kind of the precedent that was set, but we'll see.
yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't wasted energy looking at it. Like when he plays, and that's kind of the approach I would suggest others take.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, don't get too hung up on it. As long as he gets eligible and it's not like halfway through the Big East slate, I think we'll be okay.
and that'd be a little funny if it was.
It would be funny if his first game is like home against UConn in February.
Is that kind of what happened with Big Z? Like, wasn't his, or maybe it
It
was
was
against some shitter. I just remember, like, I think he hit like two threes in the first minute and everyone went crazy. And then he averaged like three a game the rest of the year. But again,
yeah,
this is not that.
no, this is not that. This is not a 17-year-old. It's a grown man who looks like he's filled out already. Like he's played games against some of the guys who went and got drafted as lottery picks this year and the year before. Like I can't stress that enough. He put up better numbers in Bundesliga than one of the guys who got drafted as a lottery. I don't remember if it was this year or last year because I really don't follow the NBA enough, but he got
They
feedback
started
from the
doing
draft.
that damn national anthem. Dr. Chim doesn't care anymore.
That happened around. No, it was because the Bulls fired Thibodeau. That was literally my last straw. But no, like he's gone and got draft feedback. I think 2 or 3 years now. Like he's on the radar of NBA teams. It's a huge deal if he plays for us this year. It's a huge deal.
Just November 22nd, get him back for the Nebraska game, and I'm sure they'd take that very
They
well.
would be
They
so
should
happy.
they should do that just to fuck with them. That would be
Some
so. I
that
mean, the Big Ten hates Nebraska, and I'm pretty sure they oversee this type of decision, so that could happen.
yeah, the Big Ten famously wants
The
Nebraska to fail because they hate money.
the Big East is still angry about Nebraska trying to play football in 2020. So they decide to reinstate them like an hour before tip.
Any chance you have to screw yourselves out of more money, you do it.
And yeah, yeah, that's the issue with Big Ten refs always hating their own team.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I bet they don't want Nebraska in the playoff. I bet they would hate that. I bet they would hate that extra $20 million.
well, that's normally how I mean, I think with this last round of realignment, colleges have kind of come to the agreement like we have all the money we need. I think we're probably good. Um, now we can just play sports for the
Yeah,
foreseeable future.
everyone can just be happy and do whatever they want. We don't need the money.
Yeah. This is just a weird schedule of how like we have like just four shitters to start the year. Although I mean, I guess UMKC was like okay in the summit last year. And then after that, like
There's no break.
there's no break at all. Like I mean, I guess I don't know what UNLV has, but like that's not a break.
No,
'Cause
not after last
that's
year.
what we saw last year. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one
Uh
of those games that you look at as like a maybe like an Alabama type of game where you get them at home. Hopefully we blow them out and maybe that one starts to look good on a resume a couple months down the line.
sure. Yeah.
There's no
I
more
mean, I
teams
think
in
that's
Vegas. Oh wait, we have three of them.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean we so we've kind of talked on everyone except Sterling Knox apparently like gets hyped up around practice time every year now, and I don't know if he'll ever touch the floor or be anything, but somebody mentioned him having good practices recently. I don't know. Maybe he gets in a couple of minutes. We'll see.
Is the
Uh,
Brockett ship at North Texas? Is that where he's at?
uh it sounds familiar, yeah.
Okay, sure. Where's Sterling Knox's friend? Didn't he have some like random ass
He's still
dude?
on the team. Yeah, Shane Thomas is
Yeah,
a
that guy. Yeah.
walk on. Yeah.
Do you think Sterling Knox is going to be suspended for throwing a baseball at Dave Roberts?
What?
Look, I mean, he looks a lot like
He,
Manny Machado.
yeah, he does. I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Ty Davis. They're saying he's pretty advanced in his control of the game. They say he's got some comfortability running the offense. That would be a big deal if he does.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a big deal. I caution against true freshman point guards, but
If he gives you 8 minutes a game and scores two with 2 assists, I would take that.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
All right, we're gonna. Yeah, I mean, so I think that's kind of it on the new guys. Like Larry Johnson, don't expect much, but I'm intrigued by the talent. If you get anything out of McAndrew, I'd be surprised. But again, I think he's a for real talent. So we'll see. Stuff you think about next year.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just kind of what we've said. It's going to be a very narrow range of outcomes and a wide range of outcomes for a lot of players.
Yep, yep. The team's ceiling and floor seems pretty well constructed, but a couple of players could wind up just about anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way you end up bad is if Kalkbrenner gets hurt.
Yep.
The only way you end up in like that upper echelon is if like Ashworth, Isaacs, Green, and Neal, I think honestly, all hit like their ceilings. Like I'm not even really going to factor in, like I said, I'm not going to factor in McAndrew, Johnson. Um, I guess maybe you can throw Miller into like if he takes a step forward, but I kind of struggle to see that given the injury.
Yeah, it's for me, it's you need three of Ashworth, Isaacs, Green, Zugic, Neal to be for real. That's the only way I think you achieve anything better than, like you said, like a 4 or 5, probably.
Yeah, which again, nothing wrong with that. It's probably a slight step back, and who knows, as we've seen in March the last couple of years, get in and see what happens.
I mean, if we went in as a 4, I'd be ecstatic. I would look at that as
Yeah,
a
I would too.
success because I think
Yeah,
you were
and it's
facing a potentially much
no.
bigger drop off this year.
Yeah, and again, I'll contrast this with last year. Like if you,
Mhm.
if you have the exact same year as last year's team, I'm willing to consider it much more of a success.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's going to be confusing to
It
people who
shouldn't
lack
be.
common sense and logic. Yeah, you'd think it isn't, but you never know.
Yeah, it's all relative, and that's I think the most frustrating part I have when people don't understand why you could be not happy with last season. Like, yeah, of course we're probably getting a little bit spoiled at this point that it's been, what, 4 Sweet 16s now. But we do have higher targets, right? And it's all relative. You have players like Baylor, Trey, and Kalk on a team at once. That's not guaranteed, right? Like you almost don't want to take a situation like that for granted. So saying like, well, yeah, we got to another Sweet 16, like, yeah, that's not nothing. But the players would tell you that the expectations were higher last year.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess in a way that's more of a for me, this is going to be much more of a enjoy the ride season, I think.
Oh, I agree. Like it's the kind of thing that you know, I've always said I'm not a good fan, right? Because I hate the losing way more than I enjoy the winning. So I don't get a whole lot of that. Like enjoy the ride. Like last year, I hope a lot of our fan base got to enjoy seeing those guys together. Like having that extra year of Baylor and Trey certainly was cool. But
Hmm.
this year will be more of like yeah, let's just see what the fuck happens.
Yeah. Roll the ball out and play.
Yeah, it's like I think the first Baby Jays year was as much fun as I've had watching a basketball season because that's what it was like. It was like, let's just see what these kids can do.
Man, I'd make a comment on a different team I root for. that their
Oh,
season would have just wrapped up. That was the approach I had until final 6 outs of their season. But
well, and
yeah,
it'll be just as painful. Like the losses in the end of the seasons are just as painful no matter what.
yeah, see, I mean, I'll push back on that. For as angry as like for as much as I thought last year's disappointment, like the Tennessee loss is like the quickest I've gotten over a loss
It
in a
was
while.
different than the San Diego State one, but if you're like that,
Oh,
even the
that was
Kansas
way
game
different.
from the Baby Jays year, like that one shouldn't have felt bad. It still sucked, especially because it got close.
It sucked. I mean, like to me, there's definitely tears. Like the Tennessee loss, I was over that specific game in a couple days. Like I watched actually, see that one's tough because I didn't watch a ton of the Final Four because I hated every team in it.
Yeah, I did
But
too.
like it wasn't a it wasn't a boycotting the rest of the baseball playoffs like I'm currently doing right now.
Yeah, like it's wrong to say they all. I don't think I meant to say they all hurt the same. They all hurt. Like when and even this
Yeah.
year, even if we really just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, and we somehow, find a way to a 3 seed and somehow, make a Sweet 16 or something like that, it'll still suck losing out there. I don't care if we lose to another eventual national champions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That's far off in the distance. I don't know. I at least can look at this team and see and say I see a way where that happens. And that's all you can really hope for most seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, get hot from three at the right time. And again, that's kind of just what basketball comes down to. Get
Yep.
hot from three in the tournament. Who knows? Hopefully clip UConn at home, beat Kansas. And I mean, I think you beat UConn, you beat Kansas. And like, oh, it's kind of hard for me to consider the season failure. Like, again, this one is going to be much more of I will enjoy the moments along the way. Like last year, I was almost like too stressed, as dumb as it is, to like really enjoy stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I agree completely. Like every game, it felt like, all right, well, that's a relief. We didn't lose that one. Let's move on to the next
Yeah.
one.
And I think that's kind of, I think I even said that last year. As I was like, I'm gonna pour all my emotional capability into this team, and like, I think I said that, and I was like, that's gonna be my one. Like, I'm putting everything into this team. I'm doing it once for the foreseeable future, and then we're taking a break. So this will be my break year.
Yeah,
And I think
we were
Wisconsin
talking about
sucked
that
too.
on the preseason podcast last year, where we're like, this is the team that I want to win.
Yeah.
This is the one that we think should do it. This is the one we want to do it this year. Who knows, right? We don't have those same expectations. Maybe we should. Maybe this is being disrespectful of what Mac has done with this program in the last few years to not say there's no reason we can't be right back where we were.
Hmm.
But the program is still trending in a positive. I'd be a little more worried if it wasn't, you know, but the program is still trending in the direction where I don't think our window necessarily closes this year. I very much felt like it might have last year.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I'm maybe a little less paranoid about the chance of falling back into oblivion. But I
Sure.
mean, we've talked about it, right? Like in 2011, 2012, there's no way Butler thought they'd be where they are now. You're never that far away from
Mhm.
obscurity again. If
Yeah,
Xavier didn't have Sean Miller right now, where would they be as a program?
yeah. I mean, you're one bad, with the exception of maybe a dozen schools, you're one bad hire away.
Yeah,
Like if you, which again, it would be hard to do, but like if Creighton has a Kenny Payne-esque hire, like it's not we'll just get Pat Kelsey and I think Louisville is going to be a top 15 team. Like not this year, but the next year. Like I think they'll
sure.
be like
Yeah.
tournament contention this year. Like that is not how it works.
No,
If
it's not. I like. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a chance we could bounce back from a bad hire because I think the fan base and the donor base are both pretty committed at this point.
does,
Um,
yes.
because that's I think probably the biggest component of why Louisville seems to be on the precipice of bouncing back from that right away. But yeah, not a guarantee. So I'm glad that we seem to be trending in the right direction. I mean, if we wanted the last thing I kind of had on my agenda recruiting seems to be at its best that it's been, certainly since I've been here. It feels like we're bringing in a new best recruit ever every offseason now.
Yeah, no, yeah, for as much as we said the transfers are the anti-Creighton guys, like that Hudson Greer, like boy, are you a Creighton guy. I'm just glad Creighton finally got a lanky white shooter.
Yeah, another 6'6" white shooting wing. Like we've never
Mhm.
had any of those before.
Thank
Yeah,
God we got one of those.
he's our prototype. And then I mean Ryby, I don't think it's looking in our favor at this point. It seems like it
I'd be
might
very
be,
surprised.
yeah, it seems like it might be a genuine toss up amongst the five teams he has left. But man, would that be? He's the one I'm all in on. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player.
Yeah. Did you see that one guy? Like I think Creighton was kind of in on him, who committed to Washington, who like didn't put Washington in his top five, and then like recruited there 2 day or committed there 2 days later.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. Allegedly, Washington gave him 500K.
Huh. But yeah, we're in on some other guys too. So if not landing Ryby certainly wouldn't be the end of the world. It probably frees us up to go spend elsewhere too, because I imagine we're giving him quite an offer at this point to be in there. I mean, his last five now is UConn, us, Indiana, Oregon, and Kansas. You don't get that top five unless you're worth it, I think, and unless I
Mhm.
think it makes it clear with those top five that those are all schools that are probably throwing a pretty decent bag at him.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, I think our pockets are not as deep as anyone, but as deep as almost anyone.
Yeah, I we've certainly proven we have enough to play with the big boys, and we probably have to be a little bit smarter with it than some of them do, but I really don't have a problem with that.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's most of what I got, but yeah, I'm
Yeah, only
I,
other thing I think I want to touch on before we close, like the NIL tournament too, if that ends up not firefesting and being everything that they say it's going to be, the fact that we're locked in for to that for 3 years seems like a huge deal
yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that.
because I don't know if you saw the Maui field for next year.
No, but is it just like decimated?
It's fucking dog shit. It's
Really?
it's it's as bad as I've ever seen it, and I don't think the Atlantis one is particularly good either. So I
Mhm.
imagine it's a lot of the top teams trying to get into that tournament.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this.
So us being in it and being locked into it, from what it sounds like, it sounded like our deal is for 3 years. So that's 3 million in guaranteed money with the potential for another three on top of that. And maybe it goes up from there because I imagine the TV rights are going to get better as it goes on.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a
I'm assuming this isn't Firefest.
Yeah, which it might be because there was that whole little scare before they they announced it, like, the website isn't there anymore.
We should do that'd be so fun if we did that. I mean, we probably would get like sued, but we should move
Yeah.
like Costa Rica and do that. That'd be so we should do that like just fuck with UConn.
$2 million guaranteed. UConn, come on down to the island.
Yeah, just a tournament of our enemies. UConn,
Alabama,
Nebraska.
Wichita State, and Nebraska.
Sure, just yeah, sure. We can throw Alabama in there. Who else don't I like?
Alabama's our biggest rival ever, don't you know that?
Yeah, yeah, according to them.
North
Just
Carolina hates us too. We can send them down there.
yeah, what a yeah, sure, why not?
Marquette, specifically, Big East Golden Eagle.
Oh yeah, get Marquette the fuck down there. Leave Shaka there.
That one Seton Hall fan who hates us with
Frank
the
the
fire of a
Tank.
thousand suns.
Frank the Tank.
Oh, him too.
That'd be too much budget. This influencer, famous fitness influencers, Frank the Tank, and 10 women in scantily clad bikinis in Frank the Tank, the 11 biggest fitness influencers on earth.
All right. Well, anything else before we close out?
I don't think so, no. Weren't you supposed to run a couple minutes ago?
I definitely was. Yeah.
Okay, well, good luck.
All right.
Hope nothing bad comes of that. Yeah,
Oh,
we'll dial it back in.
yeah.
All right.
All
See
right.
you, boss.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.